sorry about that. So we're talking about visiting hospices and what we do here at the Near North Palliative Care Network. So I'm sure you've all heard about the word hospice, and it probably makes you think of a place where people go to die. This is partially correct. Rather than a physical space, hospice is a philosophy of care. Care and support wherever there's a need when a cure is no longer sought by a person with a life-limiting illness. As early as the 4th century, the first hospices date back to when Christians in Europe provided care to the sick and destitute. And if we look at the roots of the word hospice, it is derived from the Latin word hospitium, which means hospitality or hospitable when referred to a place of shelter and rest for the weary or ill travelers on a long journey. So I'm sure most of you know about North Bay's recently opened residential hospice, Nipissing Serenity Hospice. And that is a place where people go to spend their final days that have a life-limiting illness. There are admission criteria that are generally followed, and residents are people who cannot or choose not to be cared for at home. Residents receive compassionate end-of-life care, including pain and symptom management, from healthcare professionals. So those are social workers, nurses, physicians, PSWs, occupational therapists, physiotherapists, chaplains, and also volunteers. So in addition to residential hospices, there are visiting hospices, and visiting hospices visit the client wherever they are. So that's long-term care, hospital, and most often at home. 86% of people want to die at home, and they still need care, but it's on a more limited basis, and the family and friends can usually manage with the help of home care services, such as nursing, PSWs, physicians, and volunteers. So what do our visiting hospice volunteers do? Most often this is respite care, when a primary caregiver, who is usually a family member, needs to take a break or needs to do errands and they don't want their loved one to be alone. Our volunteers will come in and be with the client. Most often the volunteers will chat with clients, offering a listening ear. And clients really appreciate the role of the volunteer because they don't want anything necessarily. They're not there to take their blood pressure, or they're not there to discuss medication necessarily. They're there to listen and non-judgmentally to the clients. And the clients are usually really happy to have a volunteer in because they don't feel like they're burdening their family. Whereas if they were to talk to their family members about what's really going on, sometimes they feel like they're a burden. So what do volunteers do for clients other than listen? That's kind of depends on the volunteer and the client relationship, but sometimes they'll make tea or offer a light meal. Sometimes they'll read to the clients. They'll bring them fresh baking. They can reposition them if they sort of slouch down in the bed. They might play a game of cards, or even help the client to write cards for birthdays or celebrations that they won't be around for. But the most important thing that a visiting hospice volunteer does is offer their presence. So that's the most important thing. There are other roles at our hospice, which I'll talk about soon. If anybody has any questions, you can just type them in the chat box. But I'm going to go ahead and do a little presentation on Near North. Okay. Can everyone see the PowerPoint when I put it up? No. All right. Okay, I'll try that again. How about now? No. Sorry, I just need a minute. Okay, we should be good now. There we go. Okay, here we go. So we are the Near North Palliative Care Network, and we've been around since 1987, so I think that's 33 years. Our mission is to enhance the comfort, dignity, and quality of life of individuals with a terminal illness and to offer bereavement support throughout the community. Our values are human dignity, compassion, social responsibility, community service, and ethics. Hospice palliative care focuses on the best quality of life to the palliative patient when a cure is no longer possible. It uses principles and practices to meet the needs of the client in all human dimensions, so that's physical, psychological, social, cultural, emotional, and spiritual. Hospice palliative care is about providing comfort, dignity, and compassion to the whole person in every situation and circumstance, and it involves the whole circle of care around the palliative patient, so that's medical professionals, personal support workers, caregivers, family members, friends, and community services. NNPCN is your local visiting hospice, and we go where the client is. We follow the client wherever the client goes. We also offer bereavement support. So our bereavement support is about providing psychosocial support to those who are grieving and letting go of a loved one who has died. It involves offering listening and unconditional support during one of life's most difficult experiences, the loss of a loved one. We are not for profit. We are in Nipissing and East Prairie Sound. We're volunteer based. All our services are free of charge. Our volunteers are extensively trained. We offer palliative and bereavement support, emotional support, social support, spiritual support, grief facilitation, education, and resources. Again, our services, visiting hospice and caregiver respite, caregiver support and comfort bags. So we bring a care package to the client when we first meet them, and it includes things like a knitted blanket, maybe a word search, some herbal tea, things like that. We have advanced care planning workshops. We have a lending library. We have seniors education events, and also education and training events. So our grief support includes anticipatory grief, when you haven't lost somebody yet, but you're anticipating the loss of that person, individual and group sessions, complex grief support, and also a day program. So just take a moment to ask yourself how you would feel if your loved one received compassionate end-of-life care from a trained volunteer, and also if you had a safe and confidential space to grieve your loved one. Most likely you would feel pretty supported and maybe a little bit relieved. So without this support, how would you feel? And most often people feel alone, isolated, and pretty frazzled. What does a volunteer provide? Listening and unconditional acceptance, supportive presence, empathy, understanding, reassuring company, compassionate care to the palliative client, respite to the caregiver, grief facilitation, and unconditional support. Who can be our palliative client? Anybody with a life-limiting condition, and also the family members and caregivers of that client. We welcome all referrals from different agencies, healthcare professionals, self-referrals, and other community referrals. Who can be our bereavement clients? Family members and caregivers of the client, the general public, so anybody that is dealing with loss and grief, and we welcome referrals from all of those same places. Who can be our volunteer? So volunteers are members of our community trained by NNPCN to be Visiting Hospice palliative caregivers, bereavement and grief facilitators, trainers and educators, part of our administration, and ambassadors to the community. And we also have an exciting gardening opportunity coming up in spring 2021 for our new butterfly garden. So please keep an eye on social media for that. And you can contact us at that phone number or at the email address listed there, office@nnpcn.com. So that's it for me. I'm going to open it up to questions if anybody's out there that has any questions. And I'll just write the email address and the phone number in the chat box in case anybody has questions or is interested in services or becoming a volunteer. Great, so that's it for my presentation today. I hope you learned a little bit more about what it is we do here. Oftentimes when I tell people where I work for a visiting hospice, they have no idea what that means. So hopefully you can help spread the word now that you've learned a little bit more about what it is that we do. Thank you all for attending.